She walked into the city's most expensive gala in thrift store sneakers and a taco-shaped purse, raised her hand at the billionaire auction and bid $5. The room laughed, until he said one word that silenced them all. Sold. What started as a dare turned into a date that would break the internet, melt an ice-cold heart, and flip two lives upside down. If you're new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and tell us where you're watching from. Now let's jump into the story. The ballroom at the Aldridge Hotel sparkled like it had something to prove. Crystal chandeliers dangled from the ceiling like they were judging everyone beneath them. Waiters in white gloves glided around with glasses of champagne that cost more than rent. A string quartet played softly in the background, and everyone in the room looked like they had never once checked a price tag in their lives. It was the annual Hearthstone charity auction, a night full of glitter, gossip, and men being sold for ridiculous sums in the name of goodwill. Every guest was dressed to the nines, maybe even the tens. Floor-length gowns shimmered like galaxies. Tuxedos gleamed under the lights. People smiled with perfect teeth and sipped from delicate glasses while pretending not to care who was watching, except for Jenna Marlowe. Jenna wasn't supposed to be there. She hadn't been invited. She wasn't a socialite or an heiress or the kind of woman who made appearances. She was a podcast host with a loud laugh and a love for chaos. She'd snuck in with her two best friends, Tanya and Bree, because Tanya worked for the catering company and had swiped 3 staff passes without blinking. Jenna wore a faded yellow hoodie over a black dress she'd bought for $8 at a thrift store. Her sneakers were scuffed, her curls wild, her lipstick fire engine red. She looked like sunshine had decided to crash the moon's party and wasn't sorry about it. She leaned over the table and whispered to Tanya, asking who these men were and why they all looked like they did bicep curls for breakfast. Bree snorted into her drink and said they were bachelors up for auction. All of them rich, some famous, most deeply in love with their reflection. Senna laughed and said if another man stepped on stage with his shirt half open and his ego fully inflated, she was going to throw a bread roll at him. Tanya giggled. Bree dared her to do it. Jenna picked up the bread roll and waited. The crowd hushed. Suddenly, the announcer cleared his throat and said they were now introducing the final bachelor of the evening, the most anticipated guest of the night. Mr. Silas Cranebry choked on her drink, her eyes wide as she whispered that Silas Crane was the founder of Blue Peak Ventures, a tech investor who had turned code into gold. Jenna raised an eyebrow and asked if he was the one who built that app that delivered ice cream by drone. Tanya nodded and added that he never smiled, never dated, and once bought an island because he didn't like his neighbor's boat. Jenna rolled her eyes and muttered that men like that always dated women who looked like they were designed in a lab. Probably allergic to carbs and opinions, Bree told her to hush because Silas was walking out. And walk out he did. Who was tall, sharp in a black suit that looked like it cost more than Jenna's car. His jaw was so well-defined it could have filed documents, his hair neat like every strand had signed a contract, and his face didn't show an ounce of emotion, not even mild amusement. The room was a breathless bubble as he stepped under the spotlight. Bidding started fast. 10,000, 15, 25. Women raised their hands like they were on a game show for the wealthy. Jenna watched, unimpressed, until someone offered 40,000 and the crowd gasped like they'd just seen a royal proposal. Jenna tilted her head, sipped her drink, then without thinking, raised her hand and called out, 5. The room stopped breathing. The announcer blinked, his voice a little shaky as he asked 5,000. Jenna shook her head, smiled wide, and said again, $5. Clear as glass. People turned, whispered, gasped. A few laughed uncomfortably. A woman in the front row looked like she might faint from offense. Silas stood still on the stage, expression unreadable, until slowly, ever so slowly, one of his eyebrows lifted like it was testing the air. The announcer stammered, explaining there was a minimum bid, trying to recover the room's balance, but Silas held up his hand and said just one word, sold. Absolute silence followed. Jenna blinked, unsure she'd heard him right. But Silas was already stepping off the stage. Walking toward her table, like gravity worked differently for him. People parted like the Red Sea. No one sure if this was real, or just the world glitching, stopped in front of her, looked her right in the eyes and said, "Jenna Marlowe Podcast. Host, lover of tacos, speaker of unfiltered truths." She blinked again, caught between confusion and awe, then smirked and said, "Wow. You really did your homework," Silas replied smoothly. "I always research my potential liabilities," the words dry. But the corner of his mouth twitched like it wanted to smile, and just wasn't sure how Tanya whispered, "What just happened?" Bree whispered, "I think you bought a billionaire." Jenna leaned back in her chair, heart pounding, mouth curling into a grin that made people nervous. "Guess I've got plans tomorrow," she said casually. "Hope he likes tacos and terrible karaoke." Silas raised an eyebrow again, this time slower, more intrigued than shocked the night wasn't over. But everything had already changed. The next day began with clouds over the city and a buzzing group chat that refused to quiet down. Jenna Marlowe had tried to play it cool, but her phone kept lighting up with messages from Bree and Tanya, all full of gifs of confused billionaires and tacos wearing tuxedos. She told them both to calm down, reminded them it was just one date, one weird moment. And it didn't mean anything serious, but still, her stomach was doing cartwheels. Not from nerves exactly, more like anticipation mixed with whatever emotion made people grin alone in their kitchens, while making toast. Silas Crane showed up right on time, standing on the sidewalk outside Jenna's apartment with a sleek black car and a confused look. He was holding a bouquet of wildflowers that looked suspiciously like he had asked his assistant to find something non-threatening. He wore jeans for the first time in what looked like a decade and a jacket that still probably cost more than her entire rent. Jenna opened the door wearing a denim jacket covered in enamel pins, a graphic tee with a giant taco on it, and glitter sneakers that lit up when she walked. She looked at Silas, looked at the flowers and said, "You trying to impress me or Bree's cat?" He blinked once, then replied, "I was told this was casual." She smirked and said, "Buddy, you don't know the half of it." Then grabbed her keys and declared it was taco time. Their first stop was a graffiti-covered food truck called Taco Tornado, parked between a barbershop and a laundromat that smelled like lavender detergent. Ollie, the taco guy, greeted Jenna with a shout and a fist bump. He looked Silas up and down and said, "Is he allergic to spice or just joy?" Silas raised a brow but said nothing. Jenna laughed and told Ollie to give them two of everything and not to hold back on the hot sauce. He sat on a curb, knees bumping, foil wrappers rustling in their hands. Silas inspected his taco like it might explode. It dripped onto his jeans and he frowned like the tortilla had personally insulted him. Jenna watched him struggle and said, "You look like you just met real food for the first time." He looked at her, mouth full, and mumbled, "This is absurdly good." She raised her taco in the air like a toast and said, "Welcome to Flavortown, Your Majesty." After tacos came the Roller Rink. Galaxy Glide was an old place tucked into the edge of the city, full of neon lights, a disco ball, and carpet that hadn't changed since the 80s. The smell of nachos and feet floated through the air like a questionable perfume. Kids zipped past wearing blinking wheels, and the music was loud enough to rattle bones. Jenna changed into leggings and a Prince t-shirt from her backpack. Silas looked around like he had stepped into another universe. He whispered, "This violates every health code I've ever read." Jenna grinned, laced up her skates, and rolled backward in a smooth circle. Glitter on her cheeks, curls bouncing. Completely in her element, she skated up to him and said, "Come on, moneybags, time to risk it all." He adjusted his sleeves like they were about to enter a courtroom and muttered, "I don't skate." She offered her hand and replied, "Then today's the day you start." Silas took her hand, stood, and immediately regretted every decision that led to this moment. His balance wobbled, his legs betrayed him, and he pitched forward like a poorly designed skyscraper. Jenna caught him before he hit the floor. laughing so hard she nearly fell too. "You skate like a confused deer," she said. Breathless, he replied. "I'm wearing wheels on my feet. This is anarchy." She offered him a steady arm and said, "Anarchy looks good on you. Too slow." Laps later, he was still shaky but upright. The lights blinked overhead, music pulsed. And somewhere between being dragged around the rink and catching her when she almost crashed into a vending machine, Silas laughed came out. Low and surprised, like it had been hiding for years and finally escaped, Jenna looked at him wide-eyed and declared, "Mark the calendar, Silas Crane has emotions." He tried to frown but the smile stayed. Stubborn and ridiculous. Their final stop was a karaoke dive bar called the Copper Note. The sign outside flickered like it owed someone money. Inside, the carpet was sticky, the drinks were cheap, and the mic smelled faintly like regret. Jenna signed them up without asking. Silas protested immediately, said he didn't sing. She reminded him they made a deal, one real date, no bailouts. He said it would be painful. She said good. Pain is character development. When their turn came, the host called them up. Jenna grabbed the mic with a flourish and introduced Silas as the billionaire formerly known as Boring. The crowd cheered, confused and delighted. The music started. It was Ain't No Mountain High Enough, of course. Jenna belted the opening like she was born for the stage. Silas missed his cue. She spun toward him, pointed dramatically and shouted, "Your turn, finance boy." He looked out at the crowd, eyes wide, then took the mic and sang one line, badly. Everyone laughed, but not meanly. Jenna hyped him up, dancing in circles, snapping her fingers. He kept singing, out of tune but fully committed, and somewhere between verse 2 and the chorus, they were both laughing so hard they couldn't breathe when the song ended. The crowd cheered, someone bought them drinks, and Jenna looked at Silas, eyes sparkling under the dusty lights, and said, "This is the most fun you've had in years. Admit it." He stared at her, flushed and sweaty, and whispered, "It really is." Outside, the night air was cool, the city buzzing around them. Silas took a deep breath and said, "Thank you." Jenna tilted her head and replied, "You haven't even had dessert yet." He looked nervous again, unsure of what came next, but Jenna just smiled, tugged his hand and said, "One more stop, rooftop lemonade, my specialty." The date wasn't over and neither were they. The morning after their wild date began with sunlight streaming through Jenna's window and the sound of her phone buzzing like it was trying to escape the nightstand. Her eyes were barely open when she grabbed it and saw the dozens of notifications flooding her screen. Her name was trending. Her face was on the front page of half the internet, and someone had uploaded a blurry video of Silas Crane skating. Like a lost duck while she laughed with her whole body, Jenna sat up slowly, a half-eaten croissant on her lap, and disbelief painted across her face. Bree had texted 5 heart eye emojis and a photo of the taco truck. Tanya had sent her a voice note screaming, "You are famous." And someone on Twitter had already made a gif of Silas singing, off-key with the caption, "Love in the time of roller skates." Everywhere she looked, the internet was talking about her, the $5 girl who cracked the billionaire, the curvy podcast host who dared to laugh too loud and dance too much. There were think pieces, memes, rumors, even a Photoshop of her and Silas standing on a taco-shaped wedding cake. Jenna laughed at first, then stopped when she realized something was missing. Silas hadn't called, hadn't texted, not even a memesh waited through the morning. Told herself he was probably in meetings, maybe trying to figure things out with his team. By evening she was telling herself it was just one date, a moment of chaos that didn't mean what she thought it did. Maybe he was embarrassed, maybe it was all for the cameras, maybe he was going across the city. Silas stood in a boardroom surrounded by glass screens and very tense people in expensive shoes. His publicist Tammy had a slideshow of headlines projected on the wall, each one louder and messier than the last. She clicked through images of him skating, singing, and sitting on a curb holding a taco like it was made of gold. Tammy crossed her arms and said this was wildly off-brand. She reminded him that he was supposed to be the cool, untouchable investor, not someone who falls in glitter and eats street food. Silas looked at the screen, at Jenna's laughing face frozen mid-spin, and said, "That was the point." Tammy raised a brow and replied that he had meetings, mergers, and a reputation that wasn't built on neon lights. She told him the board loved the buzz, but warned it would fade fast, and worse. Viola was back in town. Silas's expression didn't change, but his jaw tensed just slightly. Viola Hart was his former fiancée, the perfect match on paper, sharp and strategic. Her return had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with media deals and family connections. Tammy said she had already RSVP'd to the upcoming Hartley Gala and wanted a conversation. Silas didn't answer right away, his mind still stuck on Jenna's rooftop, the lemonade she'd made from scratch, her voice singing off-key in his memory. Like a favorite song, Tammy sighed and asked what exactly was going on between him and Jenna Marlowe. He didn't answer because he didn't know. Meanwhile, Jenna sat in her podcast studio trying to act like nothing had changed. The phone lines were lit up with callers asking if Silas was single, if he was as awkward in real life, if she was starting a new dating service for billionaires. The producers were thrilled, ratings had jumped. Sponsors were calling, but her smile felt thin and pasted on. Mallow, her co-host and longtime friend, leaned over and asked if she was okay. Jenna shrugged and said it was just a story. One crazy night, nothing more. Milo nodded but didn't believe her. He handed her a cupcake, shaped like a taco, and said, "Sometimes it's okay to want more." By the next day, Jenna was done waiting. She buried herself in editing, ignored the noise, told herself she didn't care if Silas ever called. But deep down she did. Because somewhere between tacos and karaoke, she'd seen something real in his eyes, and now all she could feel was the sting of being forgotten. Then came the surprise. Walked into the studio during a commercial break, holding a small paper bag and looking like he'd aged 10 years in 2 days. The producers gawked, the interns whispered. Jenna turned and nearly dropped her coffee. "How did you even get in here?" she asked, trying not to look like her heart had done a somersault. Silas held up a visitor pass and said, "I bribed the receptionist with muffins." Jenna raised an eyebrow and crossed her arms. "You bribed someone with carbs. You're a bad influence," he replied. Stepping closer, she took a breath, not ready to forgive, not ready to let go. "Why are you here?" "Because I haven't stopped thinking about you," he said, quietly, "and because I didn't know how to say it before." "So you ghosted?" She shot back. "I panicked." He admitted, "You called me out, you made me laugh, and I felt real for the first time in years. It scared the hell out of me." Jenna stared at him, trying not to fold, trying to remember her worth. "I'm not your public image project," she said. "I'm not a makeover or a marketing stunt. No," he whispered, then reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A neon pink bracelet from the roller rink, worn and silly. "I kept this because it reminded me that for once, I wasn't pretending." Silence filled the studio. Soft and heavy, Jenna looked at the bracelet, then at him. Her voice barely a whisper. "This doesn't fix everything." "I know," he said again. "But maybe it's a place to start." She didn't smile yet, didn't forgive everything. But for the first time since that chaotic night, she let herself believe this might be more than just a story. The Hartley Gala was in full swing. The ballroom glowed with soft gold lights and the hum of polite laughter. Cameras flashed like fireflies, everyone dressed like they belonged on a magazine cover. Silas Crane stood near the stage, no tuxedo sparkle, just calm eyes and a suit that fit like silence. Next to him, his publicist Tammy looked anxious. And in the front row, Viola Hart watched him with polite curiosity. The perfect picture of controlled host introduced Silas as the evening's final speaker. He stepped forward slowly, adjusted the mic, and looked out at the sea of familiar faces. The room quieted, ready for another speech about tech, growth, and polished success. But Silas didn't start with numbers. Instead, he took a deep breath and said, I was going to talk about innovation tonight. But something more important happened this week. A murmur rolled through the room. Curious and soft, Silas continued, his voice steady. I went on a date, just one, but it changed everything. Someone gasped. Others leaned in. Silas glanced briefly at Tammy, who gave him a small nod that said, go on, even if her nerves were screaming. It was unexpected, he said. It involved roller skates, tacos, and a woman who told me I needed to smile more. Quiet laughter spread gently. Silas smiled too, not his usual polite curve, but something real and warm. I've spent most of my life building walls, he said, trying to be efficient, composed, predictable, but this woman, she danced into my day like a storm wrapped in laughter, and for the first time, I didn't want the storm to end. His voice lowered, gentler now, she reminded me that joy can't be measured in stock prices or shares, that sometimes $5 is worth more than 5 million. A hush fell across the ballroom. Even Vela's eyes softened. Silas cleared his throat and finished simply, so tonight, I'm not announcing a merger or milestone. I'm just telling the truth. I chose joy, and if she let me, I choose her. The room erupted in applause, but Silas didn't stay. He stepped off the stage and into the night, leaving behind the claps, the cameras, and the glittered expectation cinna. Marlo had watched the speech on her phone, curled up on her couch in sweatpants with her favorite salsa jar half empty. She hadn't planned to watch, but Bree had texted the link and Tanya had called twice, so she gave in. Her hands trembled a little when she heard his voice, saw his face, and felt the weight of his words settle into her chest like something heavy and warm, but she didn't run to him, not yet. Declarations were easy. Following through was the real test, and she needed more than pretty speeches and rooftop lemonade memory, so she put on her jacket and headphones, stepped out into the cool evening air, and started walking. The city buzzed around her, familiar and steady. She thought about tacos and the way he had looked at her that night, like she was something brand new. Then she heard it, music not in her headphones, but echoing through the air, faint and a little wobbly. She turned a corner and stopped in her tracks, her eyes wide, her breath caught. Silas Crane stood in the middle of the plaza, wearing roller skates, a ridiculous sparkly jacket, and holding a microphone. The portable karaoke speaker next to him squealed slightly before finding its rhythm. He was singing badly but loudly. Ain't no mountain high enough, his voice off-key, his balance even worse, and still, his grin could have powered the city people gathered around, watching with delight and confusion. Someone recorded, someone else clapped to the beat. Silas spotted Jenna immediately and rolled toward her, barely dodging a hot dog cart and waving like a kid at recess. This is my grand gesture, he called out breathlessly. You're late, Jenna laughed, covering her mouth. What are you doing? Winning you back, hopefully without breaking my ankle, he said, wobbling in a circle. And there's more, come on. Behind him, a taco truck pulled up, honking cheerfully. On the side panel, someone had written in chalk, to the woman who taught me flavor greater than finance. The window opened, and Ollie waved with a wink. Free tacos for the queen. Jenna blinked, stunned. You did not rent a taco truck. Wrong, Silas said, skating to a stop in front of her. I bought it, well, technically from my cousin, and then hired Ollie back to run it, because I'm not a monster. She shook her head, laughing. You're absolutely unhinged. Wait, he said, pointing behind here. A building that used to be quiet and gray now had fresh paint and a new sign. The doors opened slowly, music playing inside. On the side wall was a mural, big and bold, of Jenna holding a mic, laughing, her hair wild, lips bright, with words above her head in cursive. The Queen of Joy. Jenna's throat tightened. You didn't, Ray of Light, he said softly. It's the new name I invested, upgraded, and painted a whole building just to prove you changed my life. For a woman you barely know, she whispered, for the woman who made me. Want to be known, he replied. Looked at him, really looked at his terrible skates. Glitter jacket, out-of-breath grin, and taco in hand, he held out the microphone. "Sing it again with me." Jenna didn't answer right away, just took the taco. Then the mic, smiled slowly and said, "You're still terrible at skating. I'll fall 100 times if it gets me back to you." He said. The music started again. She grabbed the second mic, and this time, when they sang, it was loud, messy, joyful, and completely unbothered by the world watching. Gone year later, Jenna stood on the rooftop of Ray of Light, a crowd below her cheering as her voice played through speakers. "All right, dreamers and dance breakers, welcome back to your weekly Ray of Light, where joy wins and tacos are sacred." She smiled as she spotted Silas in the crowd, no suit, just a man holding a taco and staring at her like the song never ended. And in the mural behind them, her smile stayed frozen in paint and memory, reminding everyone that sometimes love shows up in skates, sparkles, and a $5 dare that changed everything.